background, at least get that part out of the way to get on with the demonstration. And one thing to think about now is because the coffee cup is black, that's going to be the darkest thing. If you notice in the samples, there's even another one over there that they can grab. The background is more gray. Now it can be any shade that you want, but you want to make sure you don't have a black background. Otherwise that coffee cup is not going to come forward as it needs to, okay? So I want you guys to think about that as a background, okay? Now, to start, when you do your ground and you do your sketch, that can just be your thinner, which is what we painted with last assignment. Everything was just thinner. But when you begin to start putting on your first layers and even the subsequent layers that are a little heavier, now you guys can use the medium that came in your painting kits, okay? And so in your clean jar, when you're ready for that stage, you can do, did y'all get Turpenoid? Were y'all able to get Turpenoid? Okay. You want to open your Turpenoid and your medium and do about equal parts and just stir it. Like with the handle of one of your brushes, just stir it all together and let that all come together. And that's what you're going to paint with your permanent layers, okay? So you guys can start using this now in Turpenoid. So just another black and white at this point, okay? So I got my black and white on my palette. So just straight up thinner to start. Remember to start off nice and thin, kind of inky, okay? And I'm just going to work out a very quick sketch. Bowl. Start with the bowl, that way you're not having to float that coffee cup when you get the bowl placed. All you gotta do is drop that coffee cup in there. Get that ellipse going. There we go. All right. So what I want you guys to think about in the approach to this assignment is seeing things in terms of shape. Every value that's on the cup and the bowl is making some kind of a shape because those are very reflective surfaces. They're very glossy. And you can see very distinct shapes that the reflections are making as, you know, the light wraps around these objects and they reflect what's around them in the still life. So if you can see things as different values of gray, and if you can capture the shape that they make, then building the painting is not a very complicated thing. It all comes down to accurate values and contrasts that are consistent with your light source. And when you have that understanding, then, you know, it just all kind of starts to come together for you. I'm going to go ahead and indicate the back of the platform as well there. And there'll be some shadows that come off here too. All right. So I'm going to just beef up the paint a little bit and still just use the solvent, the thinner at this point, but it's going on a little bit heavier. But this will let me just, build the space in the painting and start seeing things have a little more contrast to them. Okay, so there's some beginnings of my negative space and maybe, setting the kind of gray that I want to use for my background, okay? And now I want to just start thinking about the main shadows, the darkest values, and just kind of get those sketched in. I've got a nice dark that's under the bowl here. It's a nice shadow, okay? Inside the bowl here, as that bowl drops down, gets dark, and then certainly where this coffee cup is leaning, it's casting a shadow there. Okay. And then there's kind of this dark here. See that? And then down inside the coffee cup, this elliptical shape. So there. Just immediately we can already start to see where things are going and having an understanding of where things are turning in space and what's towards the light source, where shadows will be, etc. Okay? So now just going to add a little bit of that medium in there. Now, just so you guys can see, you see how that's starting to get some body to it now? It's no longer inky, washy, but it's got some stay power. When I run the brush through it, it doesn't just break down like that. It's got some body to it. That's the next step. And when you start using the medium, that will give your paint the body that it needs, okay? It won't be so wash-based. So that first layer of paint just goes right on. Talked about how heavier paint will sit on top of thinner paint. So just dropping in this first layer. All right, but it's going on real well. Remember to build back to front. So now, to the specifics of talking about these shapes and these values. I'm just going to start with black and just work my way up the value scale till I get to the white on the other side. So all I'm looking for now at this point are the shapes that I see in these reflections that are the darkest. There's a thin one there. There's a slightly wider one here. There's a shape that comes up and stops and then comes over like this and goes up. And then it comes down like this. Makes this shape. There's another thin one next to him like that, and one on the edge like that. Just get this to arc a little bit like that. There we go. See? I just looked for the darkest reflections, the black shapes across that part of the coffee mug. You can see it already starts to look like a reflected surface. All right, come up here and emphasize the inside of the cup again because it's black. Okay, so there's that. And where the bowl is on this side is also dark like that. Okay? All right. Adding a little white. Just kind of starting to see this darker gray value. Okay? Got a shape over here. It kind of comes right along the side of this one. Kind of down. Kind of comes over like that. Okay. Like that. And it fills this spot here. Between these two, like that. Okay. And part of this shape comes up against this. Like that. Like this. Shape like that. And then over here. Something like this. Down like that. Okay. And that same dark gray is down inside the bowl over here. And kind of comes up. Like that. Now using that gray, I'll just add a little more white. Get the next value of gray, a little bit brighter. Okay. And the outside edge of the coffee cup. It's awful close to the background. I'll have to adjust that. And underneath this shape, kind of fills in right along next to that real thin black shape. There, like that. The rest of this. That. Okay, come over here. And then what I have is I can also see the reflection of the bowl inside the cup, just like that. Just pull it down. Okay, and now the bowl. This value would work well for the shapes in the bowl. And what's happening with the bowl is you're seeing the edges of the platform reflected in these distorted arcs. So just follow the shape that these arcs make across the top. This. This one comes down. This. Okay. And then as the bowl turns under, pick up more of this value down here. Okay. And the shadows can be dropped in with this value so I can get them started. Painting as well. Drop that in like that. Okay. Okay. Not quite to pure white yet, but we're getting there. Hit that edge with that shape. I want to, I see a shape over here that kind of comes up like that. reflection on the back side. Mug here. That. And that kind of fills in. Go around the bowl. Start blocking in this large area here. There's one big shape. Fill that in. Of course, right along the bottom of the bowl is that nice reflective highlight. So there's a bright value down here that goes into the base of the bowl. That, okay. Now I'm going to be into the pure white. I'm just going to find those pure highlights that are really snapping in that still life. They're subtle. These guys are really small. You know, you can really overdo it with white. Doesn't take much. This shape kind of has a right to it like that. This edge has a brightness to it. Okay, the bowl. And just through here, there are some areas that really brighten up, that roll that bowl forward. This whole part's almost like painting the sphere, so it's a nice reinforcement from last week's assignment. This whole side of the bowl here is light. That. Over here is light. That. The platform is probably one of the brightest because it's right there with the light source, so a nice bright background from the platform like that. Now that everything's blocked in, it's time to start, looking and assessing the accuracy of things. I mean, does this really feel like a black coffee mug? Does this feel like a white bowl, etc., etc.? I think some of my grays need to be a little bit darker just to get the black of the cup to, translate in the painting. So I'm going to probably want to beef these up with a little more black. A few of these shapes aren't quite dark enough. This little highlight there is a bad shape. But this is, this is the beginnings here, okay? Now, what I want to say with painting like this, at no time have I done any kind of blending, right? Nothing's been blended. Even though one of the beauties of oil painting is you can get these super soft, realistically painted images, and they're seamless. You can take all the brushwork out of it. You don't want to do that right away if that's your end, because you don't, when you begin blending from the beginning, you take away all of your references. Every shape that I made is a reference for the next shape, for the next value. And it'll be the same when you work in color. You'll put down a color, and that will be your reference for the color that builds next to it. And so you need to keep these distinct separations so that you can understand how to build something's form, something's structure, okay? And then once all of your values are on, or all the colors are on, and you know everything is the way you want it to be, then if you want your painting to be smooth and blended, that's something you can go back and do, okay? And I'll show you that here in just a second. I'll do a lot of the fixing of this, on my own, so you all can get started, and I can see some things. The shape of the bowl is not quite consistent. But if you do want to blend, here's how you go about doing that. Make sure that you have a clean, dry brush. In fact, it may even be beneficial for you guys to have a brush that's only purpose is for blending. You don't paint with it. It's only your blending brush. Because if you have any leftover solvent in the bristles, and it's not dry and it's not clean, you won't like what happens. It'll actually break down your paint and lift stuff off instead of blending it. All right? So make sure you have a clean, dry brush. But all you have to do to blend is just go down the line where each of these shapes touch one another. You don't actually go into the shape or into the color. You just very lightly go down the line where they meet. And it's just a very gentle feathering of the paint. You can do a little area, wipe the brush off, because you'll pick up some paint while you do this. So the more you work with that, the softer it'll get, and you can make this completely as smooth as you want it to be. But you can also paint as loose as you want, okay? I mean, these two samples that I showed you have completely different techniques. One's been smoothed out, painted realistically, and then this one is far more loose, has brush strokes. You can see the brush work. That's fine. That's fine. Okay? Any questions? Everybody good?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we add the medium now to the...
The medium is now going to allow you to have richer, creamier paint, and it's what helps your paint keep its luster and its richness. Just painting with nothing but solvent, things dry very chalky, and paint doesn't get its body, okay? So now that you guys have now had some experience with your first assignment, now by putting in the medium, you can tell a difference and really see the properties of oil paint because of that, okay? Yeah? All right. Well, we are going to work on this for all of this week and into next week, okay? We'll see where everybody is by the end of class next Monday, but if we need to go on a little further, we can, but definitely all this week and the following Monday. So again, if you need to be in here working outside of class to get this going, if you need more than just class time, I encourage you to come over and paint and work on it as you can. All right? Very good.